Welcome to the Lockdown Life podcast. All of our podcasts are available on our YouTube channel. And while you're there, I would appreciate it if you'd hit the subscribe button. Today, I'm joined by the voice of poker, a man that has experienced the poker and gambling world from every angle, Jesse May. Jesse, welcome. How is lockdown treating you?
Thanks, Jamie. I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed to say that it's so far. It's actually been so good for me. Comparatively, to everything else that's going on out there. I feel like I've been, well, it turns out now that I can put a sort of a label on what I've been doing for the last 12 years, which is practicing for this moment. I rarely leave my house as it is. So, but yeah, I'm glad you're doing this kind of thing because, people need to be talking and have content and that kind of thing. So, yeah. But yeah, it's, just basically keeping my fingers crossed like everybody else.
Yeah. I think a lot of us, a lot of people in the poker community are similar enough. I think we're always anti-social beings to a certain extent. So the lockdown may not be affecting the poker community as much as the general population.
It's fun. It's funny, isn't it? I mean, like, there's all these guys now, especially if you follow like poker social media, which I'm kind of a big gazer at, who, that they never get out of their basement anyway. Like, what, what is actually, these are the luckiest guys in the world because they make their living online. They're always locked inside, and now they're told they actually have to stay there. But yeah. Better yet, other people have to now stay there too, and they're totally out of their comfort zone. So, I don't really, I think right now, if you are an online poker player or really any kind of poker player, you're probably feeling like there's some sort of adjustments you can make that other people are having a lot more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a lot of people are struggling or maybe finding that they're finding themselves in a situation they're not used to, but a lot of poker guys are as you say, in their comfort zone, and the poker, the traffic with the online poker is obviously increased an awful lot during this lockdown.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, just that fact right there, because I would have to say that I was a bit of a seller of online poker. If you go back 4 or 5 years, there was too many issues with it. I thought it was dying and was totally being replaced by live. This has been like some sort of a perfect storm for online poker because, first of all, there's no sports betting, and this is the only real form of skilled gambling there is left. So it's really interesting to see it taking off like it is.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely a lot of my friends that would be very much recreational poker players, recreational gamblers. A lot of them are starting to turn to throwing €50 into the poker sites and getting a bit of a gamble off that. So it's definitely it's an industry that's, as you said, most industries are struggling big time here, but online poker is definitely a bit of a rebirth. So Jesse, we nearly claim you as our own in this part of the world, but you are in fact an American. Where are you from, and where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in New Jersey, suburb of New Jersey called Madison, which is about, let's say it's about 20 miles outside of New York City. So your typical suburb. My father, for 25 years used to get up and go to the train station in the morning and commute with 1,000 other people and back into New York City and back again. That was the real life. And when I was growing up, as a high school, in high school, New York City was the place you'd go to basically to get drunk, right? When you were really young, because you could.
Do you consider yourself
underage?
a New Yorker?
Yeah. Sorry?
You consider yourself a New
Yorker? No, not even close. No, I mean, interestingly enough, so the town that I grew up in was next door to the town that The Sopranos is based on.
Okay.
And not where Tony has his club, but where his house is. Okay. Which is so I grew up in a town that was had a huge percentage of Italian Americans and was very that sort of oriented. I mean, in my high school, the head cheerleader in my high school class, the head cheerleader married the head of the captain of the wrestling team, and that was Jody Bacchino marrying Vito Lupino, right?
Yeah.
So that was, but it was really, I consider myself a heavy New Jersey, even though I spent a lot of time in the city.
Okay, that's interesting. What was life like growing up in New Jersey around that time?
I mean, even back then, I would probably have to now separate my life out into before poker and after poker.
Mm.
So we discovered, a group of my friends and I discovered poker. When we were about, I don't know, 15, 16, 17. And after that, it just, that was all we did. We would, we had a small group of guys. We would cut school to play poker. We would stay up all night playing poker. We took a trip out to Vegas, us the senior year. We would do horrible things to go down, to sneak away and drive down to Atlantic City to gamble there. Back then it was, you gamble. There was no poker in Atlantic City, craps and blackjack and everything, all being underage. So I became obsessed with poker and gambling, around that time in the middle of high school.
Okay. So it was quite an early introduction.
I mean, maybe.
Maybe.
I think it was quite appropriate. I mean, certainly people have gotten into it earlier than me. It just seemed like the natural thing at the time. But yeah, we became obsessed. Yeah.
I'm in a similar boat. Would have definitely kind of found gambling and poker definitely pre 18 or 21 or any of those kind of numbers that they say, is the legal age for it. So
right.
I could definitely could definitely relate to finding the gambling bug and the poker bug at that kind of age. Was it mainly poker, or was it sports betting or casino games? What was your first kind of experience?
I would say poker. I mean, in the beginning we just wanted to kind of gamble, but so we'd go to the casinos, little bit to the racetrack. When I got out to college in Chicago, I had a brief spell at the racetrack, but racing is much different in the U.S. There's such a big takeout, you can't really make it. But for me, it was Las Vegas, the professional gamblers, and poker. I mean, the poker scene was so different. Back then, obviously, it was so much smaller and so much niche. But took a trip out. My father actually first took me out to Vegas when I was 16, I think, and then when I was 17, went out with a couple of friends. And at one stage, we picked up they used to have these magazines down at Binion's of the World Series of Poker. They were like kind of preview magazines, and they had they were really nice. They were full photo color, and they had basically a picture of every entrant in the World Series of Poker, all the nicknames and everything. And that just became a bit of a Bible for us. We would pass it around and imagine that we were, Seymour, the cigar Leibowitz, or Johnny Chan. I mean, Helmuth. This was just before Helmuth had won the World Series of Poker, but he was actually still, even before he won, a bit of a bad boy right then. And that was just everything for me. Johnny Moss, Doyle Brunson, the Amarillo Slim, those rambling gambling guys, and that was the allure. Back then, it was just it was all limit poker. There was no real pot limit or no limit. We're talking mid 80s here, right? Mid to late 80s, and there was some no limit tournaments, but really when you went out to Vegas, you were playing limit hold'em and you were playing limit stud.
Okay. What do you think was the first allure of gambling for you? Was it the easy money? Was it the feeling of it? What do you think first grabbed your attention?
So everybody, I think, nearly everybody that kind of ends up getting into poker and gambling has a bit of a beginner's luck aspect to it. And there's sort of this natural selection about it. This is kind of my theory, which is that if you didn't, get lucky when you were absolutely idiotic, you would have just turned off it quite quickly. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay the addiction side of it, but from an allure point of view. So yeah, there was this early thing about, oh, you can win all this money. But for me, it really was the characters. I mean, I had, there was so much attraction to me for who the professional gamblers were at that time. And back then, you know, like, okay, let's compare it to now, where it's quite a skilled profession, which takes a lot of work, a lot of thought, and you know, some really, you know, some real advanced concepts and things like that. That was not the profile of most of the professional poker players back when I started. They were hustlers. They could play nearly any game, and hustling and the cheating and that kind of thing was really part and parcel. Living by your wits and that kind of thing was really what it was about. I was really attracted to that and those kind of people, for better or for worse. And you know, I just wanted to be out there among them in Vegas. Really, that's what I wanted. The idea of being a professional poker player was always a bit hit or miss with me. Honestly, even though I had a lot of sort of success in some early parts, it was more about, oh, I can do this, I can be among those people, and then if I have money, I can use it to do whatever I want. There was the idea about I had a real problem with authority. I had a real problem with what was considered acceptable for what I should be doing after I graduated high school and that kind of stuff. and certainly Las Vegas, professional poker playing, that whole kind of thing was attractive to me for most of those reasons. Yeah.
I think the freedom, and I use freedom in the kind of loosest term, because we know in poker it's such, you know, freedom is such an all-encompassing kind of word. But I think it's freedom. It's the freedom that
the freedom to play for 80 hours a week. That's what it usually ends up being for people. But yes,
it's the I think it's the freedom, that definitely attracts a lot of poker players to the game, and just this lifestyle of even today. I still think it's the you're living outside the bubble. You're living your kind of, as you said, you're living on your wits. I think that's definitely a big attraction to a lot of people when they kind of find their way into the gambling subculture. Do you think
certainly? And just to touch on that quickly, I mean, I would say there's a lot more routes where you can kind of do that now, and in fact, it's fairly accepted, and even I would say no matter what you do, nobody really expects that you're gonna. I mean, I think what I read somewhere is that people who start work today, they're probably going to have to accept that they're going to have an average of 5 to 6 different jobs and different careers potentially in their lifetime. I mean, now I grew up in the 80s. It wasn't the 50s and the 60s, but still, there was more of an expectation, like, you know, choose what you want to do and go that route. And poker was one of the only ways I saw that didn't totally fit in that, you know, at the time for me.
Yeah, you graduated college.
No.
No,
I did not graduate college.
let me rephrase the question. What did you study in college?
I did attend. I attended college several times briefly.
Okay.
And I was at the University of Chicago. I was very serious about my studies as well, and I was I got into, I think, the second year of my where you could either have your classes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, and I had kind of determined that I do them all on Tuesday, Thursday. It'll be great for me.
2 is less than 3.
Yeah, and you can really like focus on them. And so I would have like Tuesdays would be like 8 a.m. Genesis, 9:30 Hegel, the philosophy of right, then biblical Hebrew, and then ancient Greek. Right, that was kind of what I was studying. It was okay. Hardcore. But then what ended up happening was we had this poker game that we had started up, and everyone else was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, except for me. So poker games were Mondays and Wednesday nights. And that was just like, that just destroyed me. That destroyed me because we'd be playing poker all night, Monday night, heavy game. And then it would be 8 a.m. and I'd have to, it would be biblical Hebrew. And I would just be like, what? But I wanted to, I was very, very into philosophy back then. I mean, not that I'm not now, but that was what I was interested in.
So did you have any ideas of where your life might go? Or did you take a more philosophical approach to it?
I mean, back then I was trying to solve the meaning of life, and that kind of was really important to me. I probably went a little overboard with it. There was one point. There was one point, I think it was my second year in college, where I had made up my mind that I was going to go get into my closet and stay in there until I became enlightened and not come out. Okay. And so I was in there for like about 2 days, and then someone knocked on the door for a poker game, and I went up and played, and then went down to the Greyhound bus station and got on a bus to Vegas, just to go out, just to go there, one way ticket. So I was, when I look back on that, I was fairly not fragile, but I was certainly, a bit on the edge with my thoughts and what I was reading, and that was kind of what I was really focusing on, and then like Las Vegas and the gambling and the poker and all that was just sort of allowing me to try and figure stuff out, which I needed a lot of space to think, a lot of it.
Yeah, when you say that, it was allowing you to figure stuff out. Poker allowed you to do that. Do you mean it allowed you the freedom and the time to think about these things, or did it offer you was there more of a crossover between those two things for you?
Oh, huge crossover. Yeah. So I have always adored watching people. I am a people watcher. I am an absolute voyeur. And poker, especially poker in Las Vegas back then, I mean, you could not have found a more eclectic and interesting group of people to sit behind your sunglasses and be able to watch for as long as you want. And that really, while I was reading and everything. So, and then, think about things. That was like, it was just perfect. I don't play much live poker anymore. But when I do, like, that is just, what I love to do is just sit and watch people, and let the thoughts go around in my head. I'm not, I can be quite social, I guess, at the poker table, but back then I was really, just looking to just like, get involved with the craziest kind of people and watch them. And I thought that was the greatest education you could have.
I definitely find one of the most interesting aspects with poker in particular, as opposed to other kind of forms of gambling, is that for me, when I think about the kind of the human psyche or the human, what makes us all tick, any of us that are gamblers or poker players, I think kind of level one of all our kind of psyches are that we know what the action is like, we know what the gamble is like. So when you sit down at the poker table, the first thing we all have in common there straight away is the fact we're all gamblers and we all know how it feels. So I think a lot of the other stuff that society struggles with kind of pales in comparison. It doesn't matter where you're from, what age you are, we all love the action. So I think that's a big philosophical thing for me with poker.
Yeah, and I'd say even also one thing I've always loved about poker is how much it reveals people because it puts them under pressure. So I was very obsessed at that time in sort of like morals and ethics and, are there absolute truths of right and wrong? And like one of the great things about poker, I mean, gambling and you know it yourself, is that you're always put constantly or either put in yourself or watching very gray situations, either morally, ethically, I guess I could give you 100, but and to see how people react in those situations, you really get to question yourself, because there's I'm sure there's rules of the game and there's rules of the table, but there's like a million miles of gray area, and people react in very different ways. And like I was really into that kind of thing.
Yeah. What would be some of the, do you have any early experiences of that? What was the first time you saw something like that in play at the poker tables, or in the gambling, just in the gambling culture?
Well, I mean, like, poker is kind of comes out of hustling, right?
Yeah.
Of trying to have an advantage over people. And there's a lot of cheating, I guess, that goes on. And some people would call it cheating. Some people would call it angle shooting. So, you see the way people might take advantage of someone who's drunk and impaired. How far will they go? Will they look at his cards? You might see a guy who, like, an angle shoot, for people who don't know, poker is it's something you do to gain an edge that is not quite kosher, whether it's peeking at someone's cards, whether it's having a partner in the game, maybe it's borrowing money and not paying it back. It's all kinds of lying and stealing and that kind of stuff. So I would see that quite a bit, right? And be around those people. I mean, I remember, like, so when my buddy and I, Mike, our first summer in Vegas was, I think, when we were 19 maybe, and we'd taken the bus out there. He was off of college, I was kind of in between, and we spent the entire summer at the Stardust. I guess it was the summer the Mirage opened, so it must have been 88 or 89, right? And we had like small bankrolls. Maybe we had come out with $500 each, and I think I might have had a beginner's credit card that we destroyed. Yeah. But beyond that, but we wanted to play 3-6 Hold'em, and we shared a room with the Stardust Motor Lodge in the back of the Stardust, which you could get for $18 a night. They'd give you the poker rate, and so you'd be like $9 each a night. We're splitting it 3 ways, actually, for most of that. And so it was like $6 a night. Plus, they would give you a $5 coupon. And the Stardust poker room back then was like the stuff of dreams if you were a kid, because it had, in the mid 80s or the early 80s, it was the biggest poker room in Las Vegas. Okay. That was where Johnny Chan came up. Johnny Chan was a cook in the Stardust buffet or the coffee shop, and he used to come out. And he used to come out off shift in his chef whites, and start playing poker there. Phil Hellmuth, he played at the Stardust in the early 80s. It was the place. All the big games were there. But then the Las Vegas Hilton opened up, which was a massive room. It was huge by Las Vegas standards. They must have had like 50 tables or 40 tables. That opened up in about 85. And then the Mirage opened, which was just the greatest thing the world had ever seen. Opened up 89. And so the Stardust kind of became this also ran poker room. It was still big, but it was now only like, let's say, 12 tables. So it was mostly low limit games. 3-6 Hold'em, limit Hold'em, and 1-4 stud, and then it's a little. And but the great thing was, so they had to let go a lot of staff, and they only did it by seniority. So the ones who were the dealers who were left in the Stardust poker room, they had all been there. It was by seniority. So the ones who were left had been there. They'd all been there 15, 20 years. They were the greatest group of Vegas denizens. And there was a couple games in the back that we were forbidden from playing. They were like our parents, like the Stardust. They kind of took us under their wings, me and this guy Mike. We were like their mascots. They knew we were 19, had no money. They were trying to kind of let us protect us a little bit. But there was like a bunch of games in the back where they were stud high-low games, and there was a team of guys who were cheating those games, and they were allowed to, like, as long as they stayed in that game, they could cheat the tourists in that game, and we were not allowed to play in that game, essentially. It was like some stuff like that.
I think it's a lot of people, it's very easy now for someone to hear that story and think how so there was cheating going on, there was this, that, but I think it's just when you think about an industry like that, 1980s Vegas, it's this is part of what the hustle is. You get yourself in spots where you can make money, and it's do you think there's how would you judge that ethically? I think for someone that's a non-gambler or non-poker player, it I can definitely understand the situation. What do you think if you were to explain it to someone that isn't involved in the gambling world, what was going on there?
Well, I guess, obviously I've thought a lot about it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
certainly I that cheating was not for me.
Yeah.
But I certainly knew and liked a lot of people who had far different ethical codes than me. And
Yeah.
I would say that the way I usually think about it is that people say, oh, gamblers, they're
Mm.
horrible, horrible people. There's so many scumbags, let's say, in poker. And my general conclusion is that the percentage of people in the poker and gambling world who are like that is roughly equal to that in the rest of the population.
Yeah.
A lot of times you may, for one reason or another, may not see what people are willing to do when they get desperate or put in very weird situations or capable of doing.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, like, oh my God, you meet some people who have really weird morals or, are cheats. And
Yeah.
on the other hand, you also, the people that you meet who have different code, right? Those are some of the greatest people I'll ever meet in my life.
Yeah.
And also, I'm a big believer, and look, this is something which I'm not saying is the right way to go about it, but I'm a big believer in not judging a person
Yeah.
based on one aspect of their personality, right?
Yeah.
There'd be a lot of, I mean, geez, back then, like, I mean, you couldn't go 4 feet without people being horribly racist, horribly sexist, everything. I mean, that was part of that culture. That
Yeah.
was part of that, and so a lot of the guys I knew, I've struggled with, when do you speak up for when something is wrong? When
Yeah.
don't you? When, should you, is it okay to be friends, to like this person, okay to not? It's something that, I'm not going to advise you what to do. But I'm like, hold my hand up and say that I don't believe in judging someone just based on one bad aspect of their personality. Just like, I think I could easily be judged like that.
Yeah.
And so as a result, like, I have, a lot of somewhere between acquaintances, friends, close friends, relatives, everything, people who have aspects to their personality that, aren't something that I would support, and maybe I'm guilty of not speaking up enough against it. Right? It's just, it's I think the more you throw yourself into situations that are out of your comfort zone, the more you're going to have those questions. And if you don't want to, you can very easily insulate yourself only with people who follow your what you support, and that's another way to go about it. I mean,
I think I think life can be less interesting if you follow that kind of path. It's you deal with a lot of different people with a lot of different traits, but if, as you said, if you're judging someone just on one factor of their personality, it's very easy. Joe, a lot of people have a lot of faults in different ways. So I think there's a happy medium there as well, where you can enjoy people, socialize with people, different aspects that you enjoy people, and then they might have some parts of their personality that you don't agree with.
Yeah, you can cancel out a lot of people if you want, and that's, that's fine. I mean, that's fine. And then you can also just try and like everyone, and that's that's another extreme. I mean, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it's the happy medium. It's
People are complex. I think it's
this is something that we all struggle with. If it's presented with us, and I'm not claim to have found the solution. I will say, I mean, like you, that having been in that world and having been exposed to that many different kinds of people, bad and good and everything in between, I'm satisfied with the results in terms of like, I wouldn't trade those experiences of learning about all those different kinds of people for anything. But it's I'm not proud. There's a lot of things I've done that I'm not only not proud about, but ashamed about, and this sort of thing. We all have those potentially, and it's when you get down there, there's a lot of people who would like would have an idea. All right, I'm going to be in there, but I'm better than them. I'm better than them. And it's not true. It's not true. If you start thinking you're better or worse than a lot of other people, it's more destructive. I mean, there's a poker player, Vicky Coren, who you might know, who I absolutely adore. And Vicky is, and I'm sure she'll forgive me for saying this, was a total sickie, like a total poker junkie from an early age. She would, and she comes from, what would be considered a very, let's say, in the UK, there's a lot about kind of the class and your background and this sort of thing. And she would be kind of considered coming from a very privileged and maybe educated or whatever it is sort of background. And she was, off at the Vic with the absolute denizens. She was a total. And one of the great things is when Vicky wrote her book, great book, by the way, and whenever you meet with her, she never, ever intimated that she considered herself above them. I mean, she was one of the this is my opinion. I mean, one of the people in a way, and that's what I've always loved about her, is that she never took that. I'm coming down to handle the riffraff, and they're terrible people, but I quite enjoy their character. That's a really dangerous way to play as well.
Yeah, I think as we said, at the poker table, first and foremost, we're all gamblers and poker players. So I think that's the core, the most important thing, that when we sit down at the poker table, I think as well I think very quickly, it's being judgmental tends not to pay in gambling as well. I think gamblers are much better at observing the situation and trying to figure out the situation as opposed to making a judgment. I think a lot of people learn that quite early on, that it's very easy point fingers and come to conclusions quickly, but you actually see how flawed that is when you're a gambler, when you're at the poker table, because money is the number one thing that a gambler, the gambler tries to make money. So I think you find
and any sort of like absolute view, like this is the way it is, this is the way you do it, this is the right. I mean, even when it comes to making money, like, I mean, I've got this thing, it always works, or this is a sure thing, or these people are always bad. It always breaks down. It will. The one sure thing about gambling, I always like to think about is the presence of chaos. The chaos is always present. And if it's not present, you just haven't been around, or it's coming, it's on the way. And every time, a lot of like people who become professional gamblers, there's no linear line to how you become better, either at poker or gambling. It's like, things are going really well, and then you're absolutely thrown off your trolley. You're in the absolute muck. I have no idea what's going on. I will never win. This is the most chaotic thing ever. And then you kind of get maybe a little bit of a realization, and you kind of come back a little bit, and then you're just thrown off your trolley again. Chaos is there.
Yeah, I think it teaches you appreciation of that. Nothing is ever. I think that's another problem with a lot of non-kind of gamblers or non-poker people. The probabilistic thinking is so important in how you approach everything in life, as you said, from how you think about other people, how you think about society, how you think about situations. And I think gamblers and poker players are much more prone to that way of thinking. So they're less. Funnily enough, that's you know, in the current day and age, people want a they want a sure they want a solid answer. They want a very convincing answer with a lot of conviction behind it. And as gamblers, we know that's not the way the world works. You know, it's all everything is on a spectrum.
Right.
Yeah.
And then like you're also you're always, you know, in poker it's quite repetitive, but you're forced to make decisions. So there's a lot of it about decision making. I mean, one of the reasons why, or at least maybe I tell myself this, that I never really could be successful at poker is because the decision making has to be quite there's a certain rhythm to it. You have to make good decisions quite, you know, quickly, or be able to make them. And I a lot of times, I never like to limit my thinking time when making a decision. I always like to say, I really like to be able to just take a long time to make some decisions and think about them. That's not really great for poker, but still, you learn a lot from gambling because you know, you learn that life is all about making decisions without complete information, right?
I think that's of all the takeaways from poker, that's the biggest one. I think everything in life is decision making, and poker's as good a teacher as anything. I think definitely I find
being able and being able to make decisions when really you're just not sure, you know. You just, you know, sometimes it's like very marginal, and you know, there's a lot of flipping coins, you know, you have to.
There is, and I think being everything is risk assessment. You know, you look at something like the situation we're in now. You know,
great example. Great example.
It's you look okay, maybe it was 1,000 to 1 shot or a 10,000 to 1 shot or whatever the figure may be, but it's a 10,000 to 1 shot on a few $1 trillion. So I think if they could have placed the bet back in January to have countered this whole the COVID situation, they would have. But I think people just underestimated the downside of this 1 in 100,000 or 1 in a million shot. I think they underestimated.
Right, or from an individual point of view, you know, the people who say, "Oh, I'm not." I mean, take aside the fact that you could go out and infect lots of people. I'm not high risk. I'll be fine. There's less than a 1% chance of me getting so ill I'll die. And you know, any poker players like, my God, you know, I've lost those 99 percenters more times than I even want to think about. I mean, that's just a one outer. I mean, come on. I mean, it's like, you know,
1% is pretty scary. I think that there's been a lot of the poker industry. There's been a lot of things. I think the poker world is definitely where I first started to kind of take notice. When you see guys like Timex and Phil Galfond saying different things, started to click with me. This is possibly more serious than we imagined.
That's funny. I mean, I actually just was thinking the other day, like how bad has this quarantine gotten for me? Well, I decided I was going to have to start following Mike McDonald and take his advice, because like, and then like I'm kind of kidding, because I mean Mike McDonald is obviously a hugely intelligent person, but like there's a lot of in normal times, I sometimes find his views a little bit too I'd say libertarian for my liking, but the truth is like, you know, he's these kind of times he's kind of on the money about so much stuff that I actually find him a necessary voice in my head.
I think again, kind of going back to what you were saying earlier, there's I very much like the poker community in that sense, and that even with people from different backgrounds or different political persuasions or different ideological kind of areas, the fact, the common trait is that everyone is aware of probabilistic thinking, and no one is going to come with, this is the solution to this. This is, you know, a full, you know, an absolute foolproof solution. The poker,
it's got sides, it's got percentages, it's got variables. I mean, exactly.
So for you, Jesse, when did you first Did you ever consider yourself a professional poker player, a full-time professional poker player at periods in your life?
Yeah, I mean, like I'd say, like most people, it was when I was winning quite well. You know, it was when I was doing really good. But look, so I in a nutshell, to kind of condense it, I dropped out of college. I kind of went to Vegas. I went back to college. I dropped out. I went down to New Orleans to live. I got a hold of some money down there, and then went out to Vegas to try and make it out there. And back, so in these days, so if you go back to like 90, 91, those kind of years, Vegas, aside from a couple of Indian reservations which had just started to pop up in different places, Las Vegas was the only place that offered legalized poker in America. If you wanted to play, you wanted to play poker as a pro, you had to make your bones in Vegas. That was it. That was
no Atlantic City, no California poker rooms, just Las Vegas.
No, just Las Vegas. There was actually some California poker rooms, but at these times there was all draw poker. It was really it wasn't a scene. No, I mean Las Vegas was where you needed to go to, and so it was very quite regimented. You know, there was the small game thing. I mean, you know, it was hard. That was a you know, tough old place. But what then happened was Foxwoods opened up in February of '92, and I was in Vegas, and I decided I'm going there because they were going to have poker. I knew about it, and so I drove out to I hit Foxwoods, I think March '92, and it was so wild. I mean, the one story, interesting story about Foxwoods, just give you an example, is when they were planning to open this place up, it was small. It was like it was basically a barn, you know, like a warehouse essentially. I mean, and they had kind of decided that they were going to open at 8 a.m. and close around 10 at night. I think that was it, or maybe midnight. You know, that was the plans. So they opened the doors. What?
This is the whole
casino. Yeah, the whole casino. I mean, they just thought they're not going to get many people there.
Yeah, for people.
But Foxwoods is right. Yeah. But it is smack dab in the middle between Boston and New York City. I mean, I was going to say, it's hard to imagine at this point. But yeah. So they opened the doors on the first day, and they never shut. I mean, and in those early months, you had traffic jams 2 hours down the highway, people trying to get into this small thing. I mean, it was madness. And the poker games were even crazier. Now I was 22 or 21, 22. And I had been playing pretty small, medium stakes. I mean, I was kind of a 3-6, 10-20, let's say, limit player. That's the games I played, which were medium stakes in Vegas, but certainly not college stakes. Got out to Foxwoods, and I was easily like one of the most experienced players in the room, just being a kid, having been in Vegas. I mean, it was you've never seen. I mean, honestly, people talk about the internet, and it's true. In the early days of the internet, it was total madness. But you know, this was something special. It was an absolute. It was just the most chaotic scene ever. Nobody knew the rules of poker. Nobody knew the games. There was so much money. I mean, because people who were used to maybe going out to Vegas for a week a year, and now it was down the road, and nobody could really, gauge that it was that you can't play the same stakes when you've gone out to Vegas 1 week a year and blow all your money all the time. So it was absolutely insane. And then so I opened up Foxwoods, and then I also a year later, July '93, with some time off in the middle, was when Atlantic City opened up, and that was actually crazier than from a poker point of view. That was way crazier even than Foxwoods. The games were bigger, the players were worse. It was total madness. And so those years, let's say between like 91 and 95, I would have considered myself a professional poker player. although I was much different than what a poker player, professional poker player, would be considered now. Like I wasn't really clued into getting better at the game. I wasn't really that clued in, to working on my game. I did have a peer group, but it wasn't like it is now. For me back then, being a professional meant more of a professional attitude, of having really good game selection, finding the drunks, trying not to go on tilt, that kind of thing could serve you really well because nobody else was doing it, right?
Yeah, I think that advice is absolutely paramount today to anyone looking to make a living in gambling. The technical skills,
true, but you also now you need to back it up with absolute technical perfection.
The technical skills I think are one side of it, and as we know, that's just grown exponentially for a long time now. You think about 5 years ago, people were talking about how advanced poker is, and now a good poker player 5 years ago looks completely different now. But I think finding the being disciplined, being professional in your approach is still absolutely paramount. What was your lifestyle like then? Were you making ends meet? Were you thinking about money?
I mean, it was absolute madness.
I
mean, there was nothing like it. So I mean, in Foxwoods, I had a house with a couple of other poker players, friends of mine, for about a year, and that was going well. And then I went away to travel for a while. But when I came back for Atlantic City, things were just totally wild. I had a house. Me and this other poker player who became one of my closest friends. We rented a house on the beach. In a place called Margate, which was close to Atlantic City, and we were the players in the two of the players in the big game, and we were just partying all the time back then. So in the beginning of when Atlantic City legalized it, everyone was part of it. All the dealers and everyone was young, all the dealers, the players, and everything, and you would finish the game and then go out to the bars, and we had parties that lasted a week and a half. I mean, it was just total, madness. I mean, it was a lot of fun. And then obviously, the games were so good, you were winning, so you weren't, doing everything like you should. And
when the games are easy, it's very easy to get into that mindset of, when the money is good, it's easy to get into the mindset of thinking it will continue for a long time.
Absolutely. And then, at the end of about a year in Atlantic City, I took off to Asia for 9 months with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. And we just traveled through Asia for quite a while, which was,
Were you playing any poker or just traveling?
At that point, then just try. I mean, there wasn't much. Tried to find a game. There was a game in Kathmandu, which I found for a bit. But no, I mean, so leading up to that trip, I actually started going to Europe, and I had gone on a real bad streak in Atlantic City, real bad streak, and I had just gotten fed up with it, and I just got on a plane and was like, I'm going to Europe. I had heard that there was a card room that had opened up in the first 24-hour card room in Europe. It opened up in Vienna, called the Concord. And I played there for quite a bit, and started getting the European scene. But when we were in Asia, it was just being backpackers. It was great because back then, so you could do quite well traveling through Asia on about $5 a day, which is most of the there's this backpacker trail, and you could $5 a day, you could do quite well. And we were on a $25 a day budget, and we were the kings of all creation, in Asia. And at that time, with the money I kind of had and the stakes I was playing, $25 a day in Asia, I mean, it just felt like it could last forever, right? Type of thing. It didn't.
It did, yeah. You mentioned your wife there, so the next question might be kind of how did you first get into the poker industry side of things? And did that, because I know your wife is a
She's a
photographer.
photographer.
Yeah.
Yeah, she works for my wife is has become I think the premier poker photographer.
If anyone,
Certainly in Europe, Mickey and
absolutely, yeah.
Mickey May, and she yeah, we did a lot of stuff together, but we did not meet through poker.
Okay.
We met while traveling. So I had gone. She's Danish. I had gone to. Oh, sorry, but your question is how did I get in the industry?
Yeah, well, I wasn't
Yeah.
sure. I wasn't sure which. So I suppose, yeah, maybe you're
Right. So I met her long before it. I mean, so
Okay.
I had gone over to. I had a really big winning month. This is up in Foxwoods, and then a kind of a big losing month, and then another big winning month. And I was like, whoa, I need to just clear my head. And so I had. I'd found this company that was like work camps in Europe, and I'd called them up. They were like, they sent you to different places in Europe to do volunteer kind of work, but it was really social. It wasn't. I mean, it was, you were doing something volunteer, but it was really, you'd meet a bunch of young people and kind of hang out with them. It was like, I want to go. They're like, no, you don't understand. I was like, I need to go now. They were like, no, you don't understand. You have to apply, and then a couple months later, maybe we'll find a posting for you. And I was like, no. There must be somebody who dropped out somewhere. I do not care where I'm going. I'll go. I'm there.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, well, actually, if you're ready to leave, like, in 3 days, there's a opening in Denmark. So I was like, done. I'm there. So I ended up at this work camp in Denmark, my first time in Denmark. And when I was there, I met a Danish woman, who was, after the work camp, she was going to travel through Europe. And her plan was to travel through Europe and go to Israel and work on a kibbutz. Now, like back then, this is 90s, all backpackers, all world backpackers spent time in Israel on a kibbutz, because it was, no matter whether you were Jewish or not Jewish, I am Jewish, but it didn't matter back then, because Israel was the place. Once you got there, you used to get there, that's when you ran out of money. You got there to Israel, and then you could work on a kibbutz, and it was a great social experience.
Yeah.
Plus you got paid, plus they had a rule where, in a lot of places, where if you'd stayed there for 9 months, they would buy you a plane ticket anywhere else you wanted to go in the world. So it was like, excuse me. So it was the absolute place. You had to make that as part of your
a kibbutz, you might.
Oh, sorry, I might explain. So a kibbutz is a communal farm, right? It's heavy communism, right? And it used to be, they're not as common in Israel anymore, but back in those days, and in the early days, they're quite common. It'd be like a huge group of families getting together, pooling everything, and then doing all the work. And they supplemented all the work that had to be done by getting volunteers in. And then you'd stay there. So I mean, like the kibbutz that I ended up being on with this woman, it was on the Dead Sea. They had you'd get there, and then they'd kind of look at you and decide what job you were going to have. You'd kind of work 6 days a week. You got more than enough money for alcohol and cigarettes, plus maybe a little bit to put aside. All the food was free, your laundry was free, your housing was free, everything was free, and you were living with travelers from all over the world. So on the kibbutz I was on, we were like 40, and there was a bunch of Irish there. I mean, one of my best friends here in Denmark is a guy who I met on that kibbutz. He's from Belfast, and now he's married a Danish woman and has been living here in Denmark for more than 20 years. And it was, exactly like that. He had kind of had some things that happened in Belfast. He kind of needed to get away. And he had no money, and that was it. I'll go over to Israel and just sign up to kibbutz because I can be there. There was guys from Ireland, the UK, a lot of Australians, South Africans, plenty of Danes and Swedes, and just from all over. Everyone in the like 20 to 26 kind of range. And it was it was great. It was great. Our kibbutz had, so we had like a turkey farm. You could work in the turkeys. There was a cow dairy, so you could be doing with the cows. Date plantation. A lot of it was quite hard physical work. When I got there, the leader looked at my hands and was like, kitchen, because he could see I'd never done a hard day's work in my life, essentially.
Okay.
I was.
He doesn't know what's sitting at Foxwoods 14 hours a day. You know, obviously some people don't think it's hard work.
I mean, I'm not really gonna argue with that, but I was well suited for the kitchen. I was the head vegetable peeler on that kibbutz for a long time. And my wife, the girl that I had come with, that hadn't gone well. I met my wife. She was also on the kibbutz. She was the head of the dining room cleaning there, and so that's where we met. And then it was a sort of a long thing from there. We've now been. That was in 90. That was 93, right? That was 93. So, and we've been married since 97.
Okay. So
or
yeah,
98. Is it 90? Anyway.
Around there. So yeah, you that's the interesting. And you both, as we know now, you both progressed into kind of the poker industry, or ended up.
I mean, she was always she was always a photographer.
Yeah.
But by the time after we got married, I was still doing a lot of poker. We went back to Europe to live in Denmark. Say 2000. No, it would have been earlier, maybe 99 or. It was 98. And anyway, we got, end of 98, I think we got back, we were living in Denmark. And I was there basically at the bottom. That's it. I was starting, poker was not going well for me.
Yeah.
I was broke. And I was starting to look for, my book came out around then. I had written a book while we were in Asia, and so I was, there was a little bit of, I was trying to get writing jobs. I had met the guy who was running the Poker Europa magazine there. He's giving me a job. Yeah. And I had met.
Was writing always something you were interested in? Were you writing throughout all this period? Yeah.
It's a love-hate thing. I love having written things. Let me say that. I love when things are finished writing. Everything beyond that is has not been it's not been pleasant. I have a struggle. And my output over the years has reflected that. And my inability to ever get anything done. But so I was doing that, and so one thing led to another. I got invited by this guy Nick Sarametta, who had been the head of Poker Europa. I got invited. He was organizing this first late night poker, right, which was the first televised poker show. In really ever, right? But there had been some. This was the first one
for all intents and
cameras, and for all intents and purposes, this was in '99. And by the buy-in, he invited me to come there as a player because they were having awful trouble getting people to come play. Yeah. And by some coincidence, so the buy-in was £1,500, which was in those days, like poker-wise, it was one of your bigger buy-ins. I mean, you obviously had the 10K buy-in at the World Series, and you had a good number of select number, let's say a $5,000 buy-in events, but £1,500 was quite up there for a buy-in poker tournament. By some coincidence, I had like £1,625 to my name, so I was like, it's destiny. I really need to go play this thing. And that's how it all started, right? I ended up as a player at the first poker tournament. I embarrassed myself thoroughly with my play. And they basically, they were making this TV show. There were a lot of good ideas about the TV show, but one of their ideas was that there was going to be so much banter and table talk because they invited there were some characters there, and that was just what they knew from the poker games, that they weren't going to need commentators essentially. But except for like one or two exceptions, everybody totally froze up on camera. Nobody said a word. And they realized like halfway through the filming that they were going to need some commentary. And so I just volunteered to do it for free. As nobody else wanted to. I mean, let's be clear. I was a party of one that thought that would be interesting to do for free. And my main objective was that I thought, well, if I can do it for free, I can kind of make myself look less ridiculous when my actual play comes on TV. And then, it's like happy accident, right?
That's
more.
Yeah, I was aware you were the commentator for the first late night poker, but I wasn't aware that was your first commentary job. To paint the picture a bit for people, for those that mightn't be too aware, so if we say, I think it's accepted that kind of the poker boom, Chris Moneymaker's win was one of the biggest catalysts of the poker boom, but I think
and the WPT, I mean, certainly in America. I mean, Moneymaker.
The whole, there's a whole, as we say, it was a perfect storm. But the whole card cam, which allowed people to see the whole cards of the players while the game was going on, that wasn't a thing before late night poker. So any poker, there had been poker on TV previously, but this was the first time of poker as we know it today, where you'd be watching the game and you could see what players had during the hand. And I said, I watched the first episode of Late Night Poker the other day, and it's very very interesting to see what it was like. Just everything it's so different now.
It is, and that was a hugely exciting time. When you look back on it, doing something like that, the guy whose idea it was. Now it was filmed by a company in Wales called Presentable. Really neat people, but they had hired a guy, an English guy named Rob Gardner, to come up with ideas for new poker shows. They had traditionally, this company had done stuff like filming concerts, and I mean they were good. They did a lot of stuff for Welsh TV, but they invited this guy, Rob Gardner, who was a bit of a loose cannon, to come up with ideas for them. And he knew nothing about poker. But he was an extraordinarily creative guy. And this was one of his ideas, was the poker. He was, he became really one of my best friend, let's say, and my creative partner. Later on, we had a production company, but he was a genius. And when you go back and watch those early late night pokers and really a lot of the early poker, there was so much in the production about using those whole card cameras, not just showing them willy-nilly, but really using them to make it like a drama production, bring the characters, and that was all well, I in my view, all down to him, or a lot of it down to him. There was a director through all those years named Sean Williams, who was also quite fantastic. But they really created something that ended up having tremendous legs, took off in America and the UK.
Yeah, a huge knock-on effect, I think. Definitely a very, very important point of poker history. At the time, did you realize was it all uncharted territory, or was there a feeling in the production of that this could be something big? Or was it very much fine, figuring it out as you went along?
So at the players' party, the first players' party, obviously Devilfish won that first series, which was,
perfect.
Perfect. On a much smaller scale, it was like Moneymaker winning in the sense, because he was the greatest character in European poker at the time, head and shoulders, and one of the most talented players at that time in Europe as well, and sort of in the scene. We kind of thought that at that players party, you had the Devilfish, and then essentially 40 other players who were busted, because I was not the only one who had put their case money in this tournament. That was fairly standard at the time for the thing, and honestly, the free hotel for the week and the free food and going to the green room for a lot of people was hugely exciting. Just edition of the
Yeah.
tournament. But at that players' party, there was a lot of excitement. But when it hit the screens, that was really it was a there was something called, it was on this channel 4 later, which was quite late, really only for people coming home from the pub, and it really hit a nerve with people coming home from the pub, and so at that point everybody knew it was quite special.
Do you enjoy watching poker on TV now?
Yeah, well, yes and no. I mean, I like live. For me, even if it's on a delay, I'm not so into it. I think poker's a sport. I like the drama. There's a story. It has to be live. So there is some poker I really like to watch. I mean, recently it's not TV. It's the internet. But I think the Galfond Challenge is a hugely dramatic. And I was quite involved in that from a viewing perspective. And depending on the shows, if they do it right, I'm absolutely. I mean, I'm still absolutely love the game, but I'm not like a huge fan of some of the productions now. And although recently, I mean, there was a big tournament in London last year. Was it
the £1 million tournament?
Yes, the £1 million tournament. And that was excellent. That was for me, that was excellent. I mean, you didn't see whole cards, but at the same time, like, there was so much drama there and so much quality play, and guys like Stephen Chidwick, who I absolutely would adore watching, right? Because the skill level there is just insane. So that kind of stuff, like, I'm there for it, right?
I think that £1 million buy-in, I think, was I felt the same. I think they got a lot of ingredients right for what makes good I won't say production, but a good story, or a good entertaining program, because I think there's an awful lot that goes into a poker production. You have to get the characters right, playing at the table. You have to get, obviously, the higher the stakes, the more exciting it is for people. But for that particular tournament, they had half the players were non-professionals, and they each invited one professional. And I thought that really added a special and entertaining dynamic at the table, because a lot of this high level versus high level poker playing is it's interesting in its own way, but I definitely think the best poker I've seen on TV, if you go back to kind of like the high stakes poker episodes, the World Series of Poker, their best broadcasts, it's about it's the mixture of personalities and how that translates to the game. And I think that particular production really captured that well. What about what's the best event you've commentated on, or maybe some of the more memorable events that you've commentated on yourself? Anything stand out in your mind?
Sure. I mean, the first Poker Million, excuse me, there was nothing like it, and all the Poker Millions, to be fair, maybe with the exception of one or two, but all the Poker Millions were fantastic. The first one was just it had £1 million first prize because they guaranteed it, but there was just an overlay. There was the second prize was going to be nothing because they didn't get them, and then they put extra money up, and then the second prize was like 100,000, and then so it was like this winner take all tournament, the biggest ever. It was held on the Isle of Man, and everybody came. All the big poker players came for this because it was going to be the £1 million first prize, so we're all locked on the Isle. I mean, the Isle of Man is, you could not. It's like being locked on a ship, right? I mean, there is nowhere else to go. And so it was this incredible week there. And then the final was the first ever totally live final table for that kind of big money on TV, live on Sky Sports. Now it was a mess, like that particular one, but the drama and how it actually came about, which was that there was this guy, You know, when they got down close to the final table, and then actually the day before reached the final six, a lot of the players were quite well known and quite proficient. You know, there was Tony Bloom, who was, you know, big even back then. He was quite
the
big
owner.
style.
Yeah, the owner of Brighton. Brighton.
He owns Brighton now, and you know, one of you know, historically one of the bigger gamblers of the time, and he's quite accomplished poker player. He was part of that lineup, and Ian Dobson, who at the time was quite a well-regarded pro, was in there. Of course, Barney Boatman was there. Teddy Toole, who was a French-Israeli player, who, you know, he had his complimenters and detractors, but he was a player. Yeah. And then you had this guy, John Duthie. Now, thing about John Duthie, he had played a little bit. He was kind of like a little bit known on the English scene, but everyone had I mean, you could not have pegged a guy as straightforward and tight as much as you could bet. You could bank your money that John Duthie was totally straightforward and very tight. I mean, that was how he presented himself. Yeah. That was how he played the entire tournament, you know, going up to the final table. And that was how people who knew him a little bit from the scene viewed him. And there was just this, everybody knew that, like, John Duthie was not the guy who could go for it. And you had to, like, at this final table, there was 6 left. First prize was £1 million. Second prize was basically nothing. You know, ICM was not a thing then. But it was, or sort of the ideas about people were just tight. So anyway, they come to the final table live on TV. I mean, you have never seen a group of professionals, and I don't say shit themselves, but honestly, I mean, it was nerve wracking. You're live on TV, you know, on Sky Sports, and £1 million and £1 million. It was, but John Duthie was a madman. I mean, and people were watching live, and you had this green room. You had Amarillo Slim and Mike Sexton and Chris Ferguson, who had just won the World Series of Poker. And I mean, Ken Flayton, every big name in poker from America, from Europe, was there in the green room watching live on TV going, "Go John Duthie!" Oh my God. Because he was like, somebody would raise, and like Duthie would come flying in with this check raise, you know, 6 high, you know, ace high fly, didn't care. And people were just absolutely laying down. He did not get any hands at all at that final table. Yeah. And you have never seen a madman performance like this, which he did to win the £1 million. It's still, now these days, it's 20 years later, and people are well clued into the fact that John Duthie is a bit of a madman, and you know, and is capable of anything. But you know, when he did it there, like the feeling that everybody, the poker players were like little kids. I mean, these professionals, to see this live on TV, and there was betting, and I mean, it was a scene, you know. And then, so the commentating was, like you say, you know, memorable commentary. But I mean, like, I'm a spectator like anyone else, you know. I just had the best seat, right? I had the best seat. Although we were in a broom closet, and the camera work was terrible. We missed half the hands, but otherwise the best seat. And then the great thing about that Poker Million, it was always, the final was always live on TV. Is that and I worked for many years with Matchroom, Barry Hearn, and the great understanding of how to film and produce sport, right? Yeah. But the Sky Sports, when you went live on Sky Sports, they brought in the same director and crew who worked rugby, the Twickenham, you know, rugby. Yeah. So, you know, these guys were used to filming, and so you had 60 people and all kinds of. It was the absolute full production for poker, and that was so. I'm sure that's kind of what, you know, ESPN got up to. Although, to be fair, like, you know, they never got off their half-hour delay and that kind of stuff, and honestly, not the same. I mean, when you do it live and it's live sport, it is like, I'm sorry, you know, it's just I think that's one of the areas the poker world hasn't quite gotten right yet. Totally agree. Totally agree, and that's why I'm like, be really critical, because I think there's ways to improve it. But for me, the way the world is today, a half-hour delay. I mean,
Yeah.
it may as well have happened a year ago. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just pre-recorded as far as I'm concerned. It's not sport.
Is there anything in particular you think they could implement today to improve it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan, and nobody else seems like this idea, but I think they should do what I would call like perfect information poker, which would be that at the end of every hand, the cards are exposed to the players, all the players at the table, and the audience at the same time. Everybody's whole cards, and that would keep it quite real. If you watch like the World Series of poker, which is on a half-hour delay, you watch the main event final table. Every hand, the players are dashing off the table to talk to their friends to find out what happened a half hour ago. So if they lost to a big bluff, a half hour later they'll find that out. But like with this, you get the reaction immediately. If a guy bluffs, as soon as the hand is over, there's that interaction at the table, and also as a viewer, you'll be watching that kind of stuff live. For me, it's the way to go. But
I think the game itself it's just another thing poker players can adjust to. As you said, with the live streams and the delay and all that kind of stuff, it just changes once it's fair and everyone has the same information. It just changes what the tactics or the strategy might be, but no one's better or worse off. How much did your life change during the poker boom? You were talking about poker now live on Sky Sports. It's a far cry from the kind of what poker was like in the 80s or 90s. How much did it change for you personally during that whole poker boom period?
I mean, like a lot. I mean, but probably not as much as I was still kind of on a spectator to the real poker stars who suddenly, were getting 6 and 7 figure sponsorship deals from the sites and all that kind of stuff when that took off. But for me, it was great. It kind of opened up. We started to get into. We had a production company, started getting into producing our own TV shows for the Poker Channel and all the poker sites, and so it. Life changed. Certainly started making some money again eventually. Which was great, seeing as how I hadn't graduated college, had no other prospects, and couldn't win at poker. I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do. It got me going for like that 15 year boom. It was amazing.
Very good.
As far as when you say my life changed, I mean, like I was from an early age, I was one of those guys who was a lifer, right? I was a lifer when it comes to poker and gambling. Poker never took off. I was there,
Yeah.
A lot of the guys who were my closer friends in Irish poker, the ones that I met when I was quite Parkinson, who I met when I was absolutely down on my ass, and he helped me out quite a lot. And guys like Scott Gray and Liam Flood and all those guys, we're all lifers, or they are all lifers. Poker's a boom, poker doesn't boom, just didn't matter really. I mean, it mattered. There was a lot of more money around and stuff like that, but gonna be involved in poker and gambling and hanging out with those people either way.
Do you feel there's a bit of a do you think poker in some ways has become more similar to what it was back in the 80s and 90s in terms of kind of during the boom, everybody was a poker player, everything was poker, it was so massive, it was such a part of the general population, whereas I feel now, has it maybe gone back towards more of the kind of the subculture kind of way? Do you feel similar?
Possibly. I mean, one thing that sure is similar is that if you're a young guy now, and you have the skills to become a professional poker player, there are way better things you should be doing with your time that are going to make you more money, and because it's much tougher now. So the guys who get into poker right now are either have a real passion for the game, which is great, and there's a lot of them, have just some bizarre talent for this that really doesn't translate in some way, or for one another reason just need that total chaos, freedom. It's a different, more eclectic mix now. I'd say people that are getting into it now, and probably there's more organized, cheating and mayhem going on. Although that's always been there, let's say. So yeah, with the exception of the fact that the skill in the game is so much more pronounced than it ever was back in those days. And the skill is recognized, it's being worked on, it's being perfected. And I've always been totally, like, I'm a huge fan of people who have some of those special skills. It doesn't totally translate to one exact specific type of person, but I love seeing poker talent.
It's a very, very multifaceted game, and I think the skills needed are very, very different. Again, that's why I think it's such an impressive for professional poker players. I really think they have seriously impressive skill sets, because you need, as you said, you need money management, good mental game, your technical skills. So it's definitely an impressive feat, I think, for anyone to be a professional gambler or a professional poker player. So final question for you, Jesse. I won't ask your opinion on American politics, but
okay,
but
I guess so.
I will ask your opinion on the betting markets around American politics right now. So do you have any thoughts on the betting market surrounding Trump and the presidential election coming up?
Yeah. It's not going to be happy news. I mean, I was kind of always, I was a big believer over the last 4 years. There was 2 betting markets I've been involved in, not heavily, based on the fact that I'm not really betting that big right now. I don't have much money, to be fair, but I've been involved in them quite consistently with a consistent vision the last 4 years. And one of them is a betting market that was Donald Trump to survive his term, which started after he got elected. And I was always a big better in him surviving. There was one point halfway through his term where he was like, effective odds of like 40% to survive his term. Now it's 99. And also Donald Trump to be reelected, which I just have always had a really, really strong view that it always comes back down to around even money for the incumbent. If you're an incumbent, anytime that, and Donald Trump was at 4.3, over the last 4 years. So it's getting close now. I would, if I had to say, where's the bet? I think Trump, anything over, anything over 2.5, anything over 6 to 4 is a bet at the moment. I don't know. I'm not totally sure. I think the odds are a little bit closer.
I think definitely coming closer to even money now.
But I was a layer of Biden. I mean, listen, this not talking my politics here. I was a layer of Biden, and I did not think he was gonna be standing here. Did not call that one well. Took a bit of a bath there, and unfortunately, I think that it's going to be very close to a toss up on election day. It's a tough market, and a lot of times with these, not these political markets, but it's weird to get into markets, into betting markets where you, and this goes for all of gambling. Like, if you want something to happen, you got a big problem when it comes to gambling on it. A big problem. Because that is not a good recipe for objectivity. Right? It is just not. I mean, and look, I'm the biggest homer there is. With my favorite team, betting on poker, my favorite people. I mean, it's never my favorite golf. It's never stopped for me. I'm a homer, and at least I can recognize that. That is a big mistake in gambling is to bet on something that you want to happen.
I think the reason I posed the question in that way was because I think it's very, very important to distinguish between someone's opinion on American politics and their opinion on the betting markets relating to American politics. One, I think, is kind of a personal, subjective thing, and the other is all about how you perceive other people, how you perceive the odds in the market, how you perceive things are going to happen. And I think for people when they're thinking about different issues, they could definitely take a page out of the gambler's book of, try and look at things without injecting your own subjective opinion first. And that's what we do as gamblers. As you said, you can have your opinions on Trump or Biden or what have you, but that's very, very different to what you think is going to happen and how you want your money to work.
Yeah, or on anything in the world. Like, I mean, I'm having my biggest obsession these days is how I receive and my sources for information. Because I mean, like, I don't really want to get into the fake media discussion, but essentially, like, it is really, really easy to create a situation for yourself where you are getting the information you want to hear. It is unbelievably easy to create that situation for yourself. And that is a really hard, it takes a lot of work to fight against that. And there's not about like that the information you want to hear is false, it's true, stuff you don't want to hear. I mean, let's take that out of it. Let's just say that like two people on totally opposite sides of the coin can put themselves, without even like realizing it, because of the way news information gets to you these days, without even realizing it, get themselves in a situation where they're only hearing the things they want to hear. And then that becomes your reality. So to come back to the betting markets, that's why it's really hard to objectively understand things that are going on. And there is no objectivity, right? But to say what is actually happening, what are the odds on the American election? Because I mean, actually, like, oh my God, if you read the stuff that I've read today, I mean, I can't even, like, there's not one person that's going to vote for Trump. And then if you read the stuff another guy is going to play, I mean, he can't even understand that, Biden's not going to keel over tomorrow. So
I think it's another appreciation then for the fact that some people aren't as, I won't say well informed, but they don't have as balanced a information inflow as other people. So trying to figure out
like I said, I'm struggling or obsessed, and maybe I said obsessed, but I am struggling with it because I don't have the answer. I think not totally sure where the balanced information is. And what I do now, is I just I try and let a lot of crazies in, so I can hear them, But I mean, like, maybe they're not crazy, but I mean, like, I don't know. I don't have an answer. I mean, like, information is a tough one, right?
It is. I think hearing lots of differing opinions, I'm always a fan of that. And then you just have to have a bit of faith in your own kind of deductive skills to try and figure out what is the right opinion, what is the wrong one, and make your judgment from there. As I said, I think that applies to both gambling and just life in general. It's
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Jesse. Really enjoyed that conversation. Thanks a lot for coming on and speaking with us.
My pleasure, Jamie. I've enjoyed this too. So any time, although with the length I've gone on for, I'd say maybe you might have gotten a few more than you've bargained for here.
No, as I said, I enjoy it. That's the main thing. If any of the rest of you have stuck with us this long, thank you for sticking with us. www.thelockdown.life is the website. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. All the podcast episodes are posted there. Until next time, thank you very much, Jesse May.
Stay safe, stay inside, and stay well, Jamie.
Perfect. Thank you, Jesse.
Cheers.